discovery of yourself, I guess?
Probably, I don't know. I've got a little salt, a little snark, a little sass.
You know those moments where time just stops? Where you can feel the air change, even through a television screen? This was one of those moments. Aurora Brown, the daughter who was never at the center of the storm, who preferred the background, who spoke softly and rarely, walked past the cameras without a single glance. No wave. No smile. No acknowledgement. Her steps were steady, but there was weight in every one of them. Her shoulders slightly hunched forward, her face unreadable, like she'd built a wall no one could scale. And behind her? Robin. On the floor. Not just crying, breaking. She was clutching one of Aurora's sweaters like it was a life raft in the middle of an ocean, sobbing so hard her shoulders shook. And this wasn't the carefully composed Robin we've seen in confessionals. This was raw, unfiltered, messy grief. But the part that sent shockwaves through the fanbase? Kody wasn't there. Not a hand on his daughter's shoulder. Not a word of comfort. Not even a glance in her direction. Just silence. The kind of silence that doesn't just fill a room, it swallows it whole. Narrator to viewers, hi friends, I'm Mara and welcome back to TLC's next chapter. If you've been following this family for as long as I have, you know, this wasn't just another awkward sister-wives moment. This was different. This was the kind of fracture you can't come back from. And tonight, we're unpacking everything. From the years of favoritism that led us here, to the cracks in the foundation we've been watching spread in slow motion, to why Aurora's quiet exit may be the most important moment in Sister Wives history. Because trust me, this didn't happen overnight. Cut to slow rewind sound effect, we're going back. Back to when the Browns still sold the dream of unity. When Kody's smile was still convincing. And when Robin's arrival was pitched as a love story instead of the opening chapter of a collapse. The illusion of equality when the show first started, Kody was clear, he was a fair and committed husband to all 4 wives. That was the selling point. Equal time. Equal love. Equal say in family matters. And for a while? Fans wanted to believe it. But if you watched closely, really closely, the imbalance started creeping in early. A different tone in conversations. A longer hug. A lighter laugh. And all of it, directed toward Robin. Robin's entrance was framed as the fresh energy the family needed. A new chapter. A woman who, according to Kody, brought hope back into his life. But for Christine, Janelle, and Mary, her arrival marked something else. The shift. Christine, the warm but outspoken wife, started to feel invisible. You could see it in her face during group talks, leaning forward, trying to get her point across, only for Kody to cut her off or turn to Robin for her opinion. Janelle, the practical and grounded one, would bring up financial or logistical concerns, and watch Kody's expression shut down if her input didn't align with Robin's vision. And Mary, after the catfishing scandal, was kept at arm's length. No matter what she tried, her attempts to re-engage were brushed aside. Direct to viewers, tell me in the comments, when did you first start noticing it? Was it in the way Kody sat next to Robin at family dinners? The trips he took with her? Or maybe, it was the way he started showing up less and less for the others. Coyote Pass, the dream that turned into a bargaining chip. Kody's big unifying plan was Coyote Pass. 4 wives, 4 houses, 1 big piece of land where they could be close, but still independent. It sounded perfect. It sounded like hope. But as years passed, the land became less about building a future and more about holding power. Every delay, every "we're not ready yet," every new condition made it feel like Kody was dangling it over their heads. For Christine, Coyote Pass stopped being a dream. It became a constant reminder that her voice didn't matter anymore. For Janelle, it was a financial headache that never added up. For Mary, it was the last thin thread keeping her tied to the family dream. And all the while, Robin's home life with Kody was untouched.
It's like, I don't know, it's fun. It's just fun.
Yeah. I was going to say, you look fantastic,
Thank you.
too. And do you feel like this is the best, like, you've felt and looked in a while? Yeah.
Robin's world versus everyone else's publicly, Robin played the peacemaker. On camera, she'd say, "I just want us to be united again." But in reality, she already had unity. She had Kody. Fully. Not just his time. His presence. His loyalty. And Robin's kids, especially Aurora, had a version of Kody the others didn't. His tone was softer with them. His patience longer. He showed up for their milestones. Aurora in particular, was always close to her mom, always polite, always rule-abiding. Robin often spoke about her sensitivity and anxiety, painting her as fragile but deeply loyal. And Kody seemed to take that to heart. While other kids, especially from Christine and Janelle, said they felt disconnected from their dad. Aurora had his attention. His listening ear. His support. The early fade, but over time, something shifted. In earlier seasons, Aurora was in the frame. Holidays, family dinners, casual scenes, you'd see her laugh, talk, react. Then slowly, she started disappearing. She'd be absent from group discussions. Missing from milestone episodes. And when she was there, her demeanor was different. The bright expressions were gone. Her eyes were downcast. She spoke less. Smiled less. Engaged less. Fans noticed. Social media threads popped up asking, "Why isn't Aurora around as much? Is she okay? Why does she seem so unhappy?" But Robin and Kody never addressed it directly. The empty seat when a child fades from a family narrative this publicly, it says something. It says something about connection. About trust. And about what's going on behind the scenes. By the time we got to that moment, the one where Aurora walked out without a word, her absence was already speaking volumes. But the silence after? That was deafening. Transition teaser to Act 2, and here's the thing. If you think Aurora's quiet exit was just about her, it wasn't. This was years of choices, favoritism, and fractures all converging in one moment. Next, we're rewinding even further, to see how every wife reached her breaking point, how Coyote Pass became a ghost town, and how the Browns went from America's polygamy family to a collection of empty houses and unanswered questions. Every family has disagreements. Every marriage has tension. But what happened with the Browns? This wasn't just a disagreement. This wasn't just growing pains. This was a slow erosion. And if you look back, really look back, you can see it happening in real time, season after season, right in front of our eyes. The sales pitch versus the reality from the very beginning. Kody Brown's pitch to America was simple: I treat all my wives equally. I give them equal time, equal love, and equal say. And in those early seasons, the cameras made sure to capture the appearance of that balance. Dinner at one wife's home, then the next. Group decisions made in living rooms filled with all four women, sitting in a circle. Laughter that felt easy. But if you paused the episodes and paid attention, the imbalance was already there, subtle but unmistakable. A longer touch on Robin's shoulder. A softer tone in his voice when speaking to her. A patience that seemed to run out faster with Christine, Janelle, or Mary. Direct to viewers, I want you to think about something. When someone says they treat everyone equally, shouldn't you feel it without having to be told? Shouldn't it be obvious without the constant reassurance? For the Browns, the more Kody insisted on equality, the less it seemed to be there. Robin's arrival, a turning point in disguise. When Robin came into the picture, it was sold as a love story. Kody lit up when he talked about her. He said she was bringing joy, excitement, and a fresh start to the family. But for the other wives, that joy came with a cost. Christine, who had been married to Kody for years and raised children with him, suddenly had to fight for the same emotional energy Robin was getting effortlessly. And the truth? She wasn't winning that fight. Janelle, who had always been more focused on the business side of family life, saw her input get pushed to the background whenever it conflicted with Robin's wants. Mary. Mary was the first wife, the one who'd been there from the very start. And yet, after the catfishing scandal, she found herself on the outside looking in, treated like a distant relative instead of a partner. Small cuts. Over time, this is where it's important to understand how fractures happen in families. It's not usually one big moment. It's dozens, maybe hundreds, of small moments that pile up until they're impossible to ignore. A birthday missed. A conversation where your feelings get brushed aside. A plan you thought you agreed on suddenly changing without your input. For the Browns, those small moments weren't random, they were patterned. And that pattern always seemed to tilt in Robin's favor. The Coyote Pass dream. If you've been watching long enough, you remember Coyote Pass, Kody's master plan to bring the family physically closer than ever. Each wife would have her own home on the land. Separate spaces, but close enough for shared dinners, holidays, and everyday visits. It sounded like the perfect compromise. But what started as a dream became something else entirely. Year after year, the project stalled. Money wasn't there. The timing wasn't right. Plans kept changing. And slowly, it started to feel less like a dream and more like a tool Kody could use. Want your home on the land? You'll have to wait until we figure things out. Want progress? We need more time, or more money, or both. It was leverage, and it kept everyone on hold. Christine's breaking point. For Christine, the land stopped representing a shared future. It became a symbol of broken promises. One day, standing in front of her plot, she admitted on camera that she couldn't picture herself there anymore. And you could hear the finality in her voice. When she sold her share for just $10? That wasn't about money. That was a statement. A way of saying, I'm done waiting for a future that's never coming. Kody called it betrayal. But fans knew that dream had died long before Christine walked away. Janelle's clarity. Janelle's shift came more quietly, but just as powerfully. She told producers what viewers had suspected for years: Kody's attention, his energy, his presence, was almost entirely devoted to Robin and her children. And she wasn't bitter about it. Just done pretending it wasn't true. She explained how little effort he was putting into their marriage anymore. How one-sided it had become. And when she said it, she didn't raise her voice. She didn't cry. She didn't rage. She just told the truth. Mary's quiet goodbye. For Mary, the exit was years in the making. She had been told, over and over, to be patient. To wait. To hope. But nothing changed. When she finally decided to step away, her words were calm, almost gentle, but heavy with the weight of how long she had carried them. Direct to viewers. And here's the thing, when every wife has their own breaking point, it's never just about one fight or one decision. It's about years of being unseen. Years of watching someone else get what you were promised. The physical collapse. By the time Christine and Janelle left, and Mary began pulling back, the physical landscape of the Browns' world looked different. The cul-de-sac that once buzzed with kids and shared meals was quiet. Driveways empty. Curtains drawn. Coyote Pass? Still untouched. Still waiting. Still nothing more than dust and unrealized promises. And those empty aerial shots told the truth. This wasn't a family in transition. This was a family already gone. Robin's unity versus reality. Robin kept talking about wanting the family united again. But unity wasn't something she lacked. She had Kody fully. What she didn't have anymore was the illusion that the others would stay just to keep the picture looking whole. And that's where Aurora's story becomes critical, because the quietest person in the room was about to make the loudest statement of all. Transition to Act 3 teaser. Coming up, we follow Aurora's arc from polite, rule-abiding daughter to nearly invisible. And why her silence, more than any confessional, more than any fight, told fans exactly how deep the fracture went. Now, let's talk about the daughter who was always there, until she wasn't. From the very first time Aurora Brown appeared on Sister Wives, she was framed as the quiet anchor of Robin's kids. She wasn't loud like some of her siblings. She wasn't the one throwing big on-camera drama. She was calm. She was steady. And, most of all, she was loyal. Loyal to her mom. Loyal to Kody. Loyal to the picture the family wanted to present. In those early seasons after Robin married into the family, Aurora was often by her side, at family dinners, at house meetings, on road trips. She was the one quietly handing her little siblings snacks when they got restless during filming. She was the one making sure Solomon had his toys during those tense sit-down interviews. And if you look closely, really closely, there was never a moment she didn't seem to know where the cameras were. Even as a kid, she understood the family was performing. That they were building an image. The early years, a careful participant when the Browns first moved to Las Vegas, Aurora was still relatively young, but she fit seamlessly into the new environment. Robin's narrative of uniting the family was still fresh, and Aurora embodied that hope. She laughed along in the kitchen. She joined in the family games. She posed for the group shots, her smile perfect, if just a little rehearsed. Fans loved her early appearances. Social media comments called her sweet, well-behaved, and a peacemaker. But if you re-watch those seasons now, knowing what we know today, you can spot something else. A stiffness. A slight hesitation before she answered questions. A way of glancing at her mom before speaking, almost as if checking, is this okay to say? It wasn't glaring. It wasn't dramatic. But it was there. The shift begins. The turning point didn't come with a big explosion. It came in little changes. By the time the family moved to Flagstaff, Aurora's screen time began to noticeably shrink. She was still there in the background, but she was quieter. She stopped speaking up in group interviews. She lingered more at the edges of scenes. Fans started to notice. In Facebook groups and Reddit threads, people asked, "Where's Aurora? Why doesn't she talk much anymore?" Some chalked it up to normal teenage growing pains. Others suspected she didn't want to be filmed as much. But according to behind-the-scenes whispers, it wasn't just about privacy, it was about tension. Because during those years, the cracks in the Brown family weren't just between Kody and his wives. They were between the kids, too. Aurora's loyalty to her mom put her in an awkward spot. Christine's kids and Janelle's kids had started pulling away from Kody. And that meant they were pulling away from Robin's side of the family. Imagine being a teenager in the middle of that. Imagine knowing that no matter how much you like your siblings, your loyalty to your parent is always under the microscope. The body language nobody talked about. If you freeze-frame some of those later episodes, Aurora's body language says more than any confessional could. Sitting angled away from Christine's kids during group talks. Eyes down during Kody's more intense speeches. A half-smile that doesn't quite reach her eyes when Robin is defending herself on camera. These aren't just random moments, they're patterns. And for fans who watch every detail, it became part of a bigger theory, that Aurora was slowly retreating not just from filming, but from the emotional weight of the show itself. And here's the thing, when kids pull back like that, producers notice. They have to adjust storylines. They have to fill screen time with someone else. And according to multiple sources, the crew learned very quickly that Aurora wasn't going to be as open or animated on camera as some of her siblings. Robin's protectiveness or control? Now, let's address the elephant in the room, Robin's extreme protectiveness. On camera, she framed it as keeping my kids safe. She said repeatedly that she doesn't want them damaged by the public eye. But off camera, insiders claim she had a much tighter grip, deciding when her kids could be filmed, what they could say, and even cutting short interviews if they veered into uncomfortable territory. Some fans see this as a mother's love. Others see it as control. Either way, it created a situation where Aurora's on-screen identity wasn't entirely her own. And as she grew older, that control reportedly clashed with her own desires for independence. Opening tone, slow, low, pulling viewers into the tension. There are moments in life when a decision feels small in the moment, a quick choice, a yes or a no, maybe even a shrug. But later, you realize that choice wasn't just a moment. It was the moment. And for the Brown family, 3 separate moments from Christine, Janelle, and Mary combined into the earthquake that split the family apart for good. And if you've been watching since the early seasons, you already know, this wasn't just about land, or money, or even love. This was about truth. And truth, once spoken, has a way of ripping apart the pretty stories that have been holding things together. Christine, the $10 goodbye. Let's start with Christine. Fans call it the $10 goodbye now. It sounds like a punchline, but if you know the story, it's a dagger. On paper, she sold her share of Coyote Pass for $10. Yes, you heard that right, not $10,000, not a symbolic $1. $10. And people asked, why? Why walk away from land you helped dream about? Land you were told would be your home, your future? Christine herself gave the answer in her own way, a quiet smile, a little laugh, and the words, "It's just dirt to me now." But here's the thing. Christine wasn't just selling dirt. She was selling her silence. She was selling every false hope that had been dangled in front of her since the day she said yes to Kody's vision. And for anyone paying attention, the sale wasn't just a transaction. It was a statement. She was saying, I will never live here. I will never build with you. I'm not part of this dream anymore, because this dream was never real to begin with. Viewers still talk about the body language in that scene. The way she didn't look back, didn't linger on the signatures, didn't make a speech. Because the moment she signed, she had already emotionally packed up years earlier. And here's the gut punch, that $10 deal was what freed Christine to live in a house where she was loved. A home that wasn't built on conditions. A place where she didn't have to compete for attention. It was, as fans say, the cheapest and most expensive goodbye in reality TV history. Janelle, the calm storm now. If Christine was the wildfire, Janelle was the earthquake. You didn't always see it coming, but when it hit, nothing stood where it had been before. Janelle has never been the dramatic one. Never the loudest. If anything, she was the fixer, the one who kept the books balanced, the groceries bought, the bills paid. The one who believed that if you just kept moving forward, you'd eventually get to where you were going. But years of watching Kody pour time, money, and emotional energy into one branch of the family, it wore her down. And when the cracks finally showed, it wasn't in an explosion, it was in that now famous calm voice. Remember the scene? The one where she said, I'm not going to be yelled at in my own home? No shouting. No insults. Just a quiet, steady boundary. Fans say that was one of the most powerful moments in the show's history, because Janelle wasn't just rejecting Kody's tone. She was rejecting the entire pattern. When the cameras cut back to her later, she was packing her things. Her face didn't say sad. It said, enough. And here's the part the cameras didn't fully capture, Janelle didn't just walk away from Kody. She walked away from the idea that love means endless compromise. She had invested decades into making the family machine run. And in the end, she realized she was the only one still oiling the gears. Viewers cheered for her, but they also grieved, because if Janelle had reached the end, that meant the quiet glue of the family had finally let go. Mary, the silent exit, and then there's Mary. Her breaking point didn't come with a slam of the door or a viral one-liner. It came in the form of silence. If you watch closely, Mary's been slipping away for years. Little by little, scene by scene, the sparkle in her eye when Kody walked in faded. The camera would pan to her during group conversations, and there she'd be, sitting, listening, maybe smiling politely, but not in it. The world remembers the catfish scandal. The awkward confessions. The endless conversations about trust and forgiveness. But the truth? That was just the symptom. The disease was Kody's decision, made years before, to emotionally divorce her without ever saying the words. When Mary finally told the cameras she was done, it wasn't a shock to anyone who'd been watching closely. It was more like the confirmation of something we already knew but didn't want to admit. What made her exit so haunting was the way she left, no grand speeches, no public feuds. Just, gone. And maybe that's the saddest goodbye of all. Because unlike Christine and Janelle, who walked into new lives with fire and energy, Mary's ending felt more like a sigh. A woman who had waited for years for someone to notice she was still there, finally realizing no one was coming. The empty land. Here's the thing all three of these exits have in common: Coyote Pass. That land, once the shining symbol of unity, is now the graveyard of broken promises. And for the fans who drive by it, expecting to see construction, all they see is untouched dirt and weeds. Christine's $10 sale. Janelle's refusal to sink another cent into it. Mary's disinterest in ever building there. It's not just dirt anymore. It's the physical proof of a family that once had one dream, and now doesn't even have one shared conversation. Opening shot, the frozen image of Aurora mid-step as she leaves the frame. Soft, haunting background music plays. Narrator: sometimes, the biggest explosions happen in silence. No screaming. No slammed doors. No dramatic monologues. Just a quiet choice, and a person walking away. Aurora Brown's exit from that family gathering was exactly that. And yet, every fan who's followed Sister Wives for over a decade knew, this was not just a moment. This was the moment. She didn't rush. She didn't stomp. She didn't even seem angry. But her face said more than any confessional ever could. It was the look of someone who had been carrying a truth for too long, and finally decided she didn't need to carry it anymore. Robin's unraveling, the point of no return. Robin's reaction in those minutes will live on in Sister Wives history. Collapsing onto the floor with that sweater clutched in her hands wasn't just about grief, it was about control slipping away. For years, she had fought to hold together the image of a united family, no matter how fractured things really were behind the scenes. And Aurora? She had been one of Robin's last threads, the one child who had publicly stood by her through the storms. The symbolism wasn't lost on fans. When Aurora walked away, Robin wasn't just losing a daughter's presence at that gathering. She was losing her narrative. Kody's absence, loud silence, and then, there was Kody. Or rather, there wasn't. This was the kind of moment where a father, a leader, a so-called patriarch, should have stepped in. Should have bridged the gap, eased the tension, maybe even chased after his daughter to at least try to